The Unbelievable Rescue. The vast Atlantic stretched endlessly, its waves rolling beneath a cloudy sky. Captain Tom Walker had seen many things in his years at sea, but nothing prepared him for what he spotted that morning. "Captain, you see that?" First Mate Riley shouted, pointing toward the water. Tom adjusted his binoculars. Something was bobbing between the waves, something big. At first, he thought it was driftwood, but as they got closer, a collective gasp rippled through the crew. It was a bear, a massive brown bear, struggling to stay afloat. Its soaked fur clung to its powerful frame, and its eyes, wide and exhausted, locked onto them. "What in the world?" Tom muttered. Bears didn't belong in the middle of the ocean. How had it gotten here? More importantly, how could they save it? A race against time. The crew sprang into action. They knew the bear wouldn't last much longer in the freezing waters. "Get the ropes, and be careful," Tom ordered. The bear barely had the strength to resist. As the sailors looped a net under its body, it let out a weak grunt but didn't thrash. With a heave, they pulled the massive creature aboard, the deck groaning under its weight. Dripping and trembling, the bear lay still, its breath ragged. A hush fell over the crew. None of them had ever been this close to a wild animal before, let alone one they had just pulled from the ocean. "What do we do now?" Riley asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Tom exhaled, kneeling beside the animal. "We save it." Little did they know. This act of kindness would come back to them in ways they never expected. Chapter 2. Aboard the Sea Breeze. The rescued bear lay motionless on the deck of the Sea Breeze, its massive chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. A mix of seawater and exhaustion weighed it down, but the crew kept their distance, unsure of what to do next. "That thing wakes up angry, and we're in trouble," Riley muttered, gripping a coiled rope like it would protect him. Captain Tom knelt beside the bear. It was young, not a cub, but not fully grown either. The sea had drained its strength, leaving it too weak to fight. "We can't just leave it here," he said. "It needs warmth, water, and food. Let's move it somewhere safe." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but they trusted their captain. Carefully, they rigged a makeshift barrier around a shaded part of the deck and lined it with blankets. A bear. Among sailors' hours passed, and the bear finally stirred. The sailors tensed, watching as it lifted its heavy head, its damp fur clinging to its frame. Dark eyes blinked slowly, scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. "It's waking up," Riley warned. The bear let out a low, tired grunt, but made no move to attack. It was too weak for aggression, too drained to be anything but confused. Tom cautiously stepped forward, placing a small tin of water near its snout. The bear sniffed, then, to the crew's amazement, lapped at the water. Relief washed over Tom. "Good. That's a start." With careful steps, the sailors continued tending to their unusual guest. Bits of fish were offered and, after some hesitation, accepted. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the bear remained calm. Still, one question lingered in everyone's mind. Where had it come from? And how would they get it back home? What they didn't know was that this bear wasn't done with them yet. Chapter 3. A Mysterious Past. The bear had been aboard the Sea Breeze for 2 days now, and to everyone's surprise, it had adapted quickly. It ate what the sailors offered, drank fresh water, and even seemed to recognize Captain Tom as its unlikely caretaker. But the question still lingered. Where had it come from? Tom leaned against the railing, watching the bear rest under the shade of the deck's overhang. Riley joined him, arms crossed. "You really think it just swam out here on its own?" Riley asked, voicing the thought that had been on everyone's mind. Tom shook his head. "Doesn't add up. A bear this size can swim, sure, but not for miles. Something happened." The radio call. Determined to find answers, Tom sent out a radio call to the nearest coastal wildlife authorities. Hours later, a response crackled through the speaker. "A bear? In the open ocean?" the ranger on the other end asked, disbelief evident in his tone. "That's right," Tom confirmed. "Young one, brown fur, exhausted but recovering." There was a long pause before the ranger replied, his voice tinged with realization. "You're not going to believe this, Captain, but a bear matching that description was reported missing from a wildlife preserve up the coast. It was last seen near the river delta weeks ago." Tom's grip on the radio tightened. "Weeks?" "A storm hit that area around the same time," the ranger continued. "It's possible the currents pulled it out to sea." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. A river bear, swept into the ocean, surviving against all odds? It was almost impossible. But then again, so was everything about this rescue. A difficult decision. Tom set the radio down and turned to his crew. "The bear has a home, and it's our job to get it back." Riley let out a low whistle. "That's easier said than done, Cap. We're days from land and we can't just drop it off anywhere." Tom knew he was right. Returning the bear wouldn't be simple. It would require planning, patience, and luck. But deep down, he also knew one thing for certain. This bear had fought to survive. It deserved a chance to make it home. What he didn't know was that their journey together was far from over. Chapter 4. The Journey Home. The crew of the Sea Breeze had faced their fair share of challenges. Storms, mechanical failures, even the occasional rogue wave, but transporting a bear back to land, that was uncharted territory. Still, Captain Tom had made his decision. "Chart the quickest route to shore," he ordered, tapping the worn map spread across the navigation table. "We're taking our friend home." Riley sighed, shaking his head. "Just when I thought I'd seen it all." The bear, resting near the deck's railing, lifted its head as if sensing something had changed. Its dark eyes watched the sailors move, ears twitching at the sound of ropes tightening and engines humming to life. A growing bond. As the ship carved through the waves, something surprising happened. The bear grew comfortable among the crew. It no longer flinched at their movements. It even took cautious steps around the deck, exploring its temporary home. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, Tom sat near the bear, observing it. He couldn't help but admire its resilience. "You're one lucky creature," he murmured. "Most wouldn't have survived what you did." The bear let out a slow huff, blinking lazily. Riley, passing by, chuckled. "You talk to it like it understands." Tom smirked. "Maybe it does." Whether it was instinct or something deeper, the bear seemed to trust them now. But they all knew trust wouldn't be enough once they reached land. Storm on the horizon. As luck would have it, nature wasn't about to let their journey be easy. Late that night, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The air grew thick and heavy, the unmistakable scent of an approaching storm filling the deck. Tom's stomach tightened. "We need to prepare. Fast." Within minutes, the crew was securing loose equipment and reinforcing the bear's enclosed area. The last thing they needed was their furry passenger panicking in the middle of a storm. The first crack of thunder rumbled through the night, followed by a cold, howling wind. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavy and relentless. The bear let out a low, uneasy growl, shifting on its paws. "It's scared," Riley muttered. Tom nodded. "Hold tight, boy," he whispered to the bear. "We're all in this together." What none of them knew was that the worst was yet to come. Chapter 5. The Storm Strikes. The wind howled like a living thing, tearing across the sea breeze with a fury that rattled every bolt and plank. Waves swelled into towering walls of water, slamming against the hull. The bear, sensing the danger, let out a deep, uneasy growl as the deck pitched beneath its massive paws. "Hold on!" Captain Tom bellowed over the roar of the storm. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the terror in the bear's dark eyes. Rain pounded down in sheets, turning the deck into a slick, treacherous battlefield. Then came the worst sound of all. A deafening crack. A desperate struggle. "Rope snapped," Riley shouted, pointing toward the bear's enclosure. The storm had broken through part of the makeshift barrier, leaving the bear exposed to the raging sea. Another violent lurch sent it sliding across the deck, its claws scraping against the wet wood as it fought for balance. The crew scrambled into action. "Secure the net!" Tom yelled, gripping a lifeline as he rushed toward the frightened animal. Riley and 2 others followed, ropes in hand. The bear thrashed, panicked, struggling against the chaos. Another massive wave crashed over the deck, nearly knocking Tom off his feet. The bear was slipping toward the edge, toward the hungry sea. A moment of trust. With no time to think, Tom did something reckless. He lunged forward and grabbed the bear by its damp fur. "Stay with me, big guy," he shouted, his voice barely carrying over the wind. For a heart-stopping moment, the bear's wild eyes locked onto Tom's. Then, instead of fighting, it stilled. It trusted him. That was all the crew needed. Riley threw a rope around the bear's midsection, and together they hauled it back to safety, securing it tightly to the deck. The storm raged on through the night, but the worst had passed. The bear, exhausted but unharmed, lay still as the crew caught their breath. Tom wiped rain from his face and looked down at their unlikely passenger. "You just won't give up, will you?" The bear let out a low, steady exhale. It had survived once again. But as the morning sun broke through the clouds, revealing the distant silhouette of land, Tom knew their journey wasn't over just yet. Chapter 6. The Bear Returns. By sunrise, the storm had passed. The ocean, once violent and unforgiving, had settled into a glassy expanse, and on the horizon, land beckoned, the rugged coastline of the wildlife preserve where the bear had once lived. The crew of the Sea Breeze gathered at the rail, exhaustion written on their faces. But as they looked at the bear, alive, safe, and staring toward the distant shore, they knew their journey had been worth it. "We made it," Riley murmured. The final goodbye. Navigating carefully, Captain Tom steered the ship toward a secluded stretch of shoreline. A team from the wildlife preserve was already waiting, alerted by their radio call the night before. As the ship slowed, the bear stood, sniffing the air. It was ready. "All right, big guy," Tom said softly, approaching with cautious respect. "This is your stop." The crew lowered the gangplank, and for a moment, the bear hesitated. It turned to look at Tom one last time, its deep brown eyes filled with something almost knowing. Then, with surprising grace, it lumbered off the ship, stepping onto solid ground for the first time in weeks. The preserve rangers watched in awe as the bear paused at the edge of the forest. It turned its massive head once more, as if offering a silent thank you. Then, with a final huff, it disappeared into the trees. Months later. Life aboard the Sea Breeze returned to normal. Almost. The crew often found themselves retelling the unbelievable tale of how they had rescued a bear from the middle of the ocean. Then, one crisp autumn morning, something unexpected happened. Tom stood on deck sipping his coffee when he spotted something near the shore, a dark figure moving among the trees. His heart skipped a beat. There, standing at the water's edge, was the bear. It was stronger now, its coat thick and glossy, its stance confident. And it wasn't alone. Just behind it, another, smaller bear peeked out from the brush. Tom exhaled, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You found your way home," he murmured. The bear let out a deep, familiar huff. Then, just as quickly as it had come, it turned and vanished into the wild. But Tom knew. Some bonds, no matter how unlikely, were never truly broken.